The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Mayor Ian Boddy of the City of Owen Sound. No stranger to the show. Ian, always good to see you again.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah. Now you're in your office, your business office, correct?
I'm in my law office. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Always like to kind of place you because you're definitely not in the atrium at City Hall.
No, it was just the logistics between appointments running around. It was easier just to set up here and be on time.
Of course. Yeah, it's the judge always likes you on time.
Oddly enough.
All right. Well, let's start off the top with some really exciting stuff. Santa Claus came.
Yeah, what a weekend we had, eh? The Santa Claus parade, I think one of the longest ever, one of the most floats, something like an hour and 40 minutes, followed by the Festival of Northern Lights clicking on. And that had followed Hockey Fest in Owen Sound, which fantastic game in the afternoon between University of Waterloo Warriors and Laurier women's hockey teams. Fast, skilled hockey, over 1,000 in the arena. So it is building, and it's a great weekend.
Now, is the roof still intact on the Bayshore?
I had to be out of town on Friday, so I didn't get to the high school games.
Yeah.
Those are always the most fun and the most loud. Like, they really rock. But I wasn't able to get there.
Okay. Well, I didn't see any emergency vehicles or construction vehicles, so I guess the roof must still be intact.
Well, there appeared to be a little more dust around, perhaps, that had come down out of the rafters on Saturday.
Absolutely. Well, now that Santa Claus has arrived and everything is official, we're now into, dare I say it, the Christmas season for the city. And I noticed an increase in shoppers around the downtown and up on the strip there. So good to see.
Yeah, we're into that season, which of course, means budget season and all those other things that come with the holiday season.
Well, it's amazing you mentioned that because, but there are budget meetings. We're taping in mid-November and another couple of weeks, and the city council will be sitting down to budget. But this process this year was a little different, wasn't it?
Well, it ends up being much the same, but we have committees made up of public committee members. And I think it was at the urging of Scott Gregg that we did department by department or, the standing committee by standing committee budgets so that everyone would get a look at that budget before it came to their segment of it before it came to council. And it was interesting. I picked up a couple of comments since from people that are sitting on committees, public members, that said, they didn't necessarily, as they're making decisions, realize the value and the cost of, what's going through that department. And it was an eye-opener for them to be able to see it. And it helps give them context as they're making committee decisions throughout the year.
Yes, I agree with that. I happened to watch a couple of the committee meetings myself, and what I really appreciated was the director of finance made some really good introductory remarks about the city's budget by saying, here it is, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and then dove in to the specifics. It was consistent across the presentations. And if anyone was watching, go back and watch it, because if you want to understand municipal finance, which is a complex thing, it's a good primer. It was a very good primer, I felt.
Yeah, so I've been kicking around since 2010. So I've been, this is probably, I guess that's my 14th budget, isn't it? Mm-hmm. even when you're on council and you're doing it every year, it takes you a couple of years to get a handle on it and to remember things and how to look at things and how to process it and just understand some of it. So it is good for committee members to get that feel.
Yeah, I think it was really useful. What I also found very interesting was that the budget is municipal financing is complex, but and it's also constantly in flux because there are new ways of doing things that are continually being introduced. There's plans that get changed. And I think is it a 5-year budgeting cycle that you're using now? So it's not just
for capital,
on capital.
For capital especially. So, where you'll see municipalities, all of a sudden they've got a big lift this year because they've got to do a bridge, or they've got to do a road, or we try and identify over 5 years when we're going to do that, how much we're going to need, what we have in reserves, what we can add to reserves, what grants are available, all those types of things. But, once in a while you get whacked with something that, broken pipe in the arena floor, for example, that you plan to do something in a year or two, and guess what? It's happening this year. So with long-term capital planning, it allows us to put more money into reserves and hold it, start to plan sort of that down payment on the project. And be a little better prepared and try and even out those ups and downs that come each year with the budget and be a little more consistent.
Yeah, I caught that from the director's comments, from Kate Allen's comments, that the goal is to smooth the curves, I think is the way she put it. I like that idea.
Each year for the last number of years, we've added a 1% tax increase. Levy increase, I guess would be better, to capital to try and close that infrastructure gap. It would probably take, off the top of my head, it would take something like a 10 or 12% increase each year to start to close it, which we can't do. But if we can keep adding 1% at least to that annually, that is dedicated just for capital, it helps us get closer.
Sure. Now, the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that when the preliminary report was brought to council at the most recent meeting, the recommendation was that the preliminary budget be adopted and proceed to the budget meeting of council. But it was there was actually a levy. There was a stated amount for the goal for the levy of between 3 and 5%, which I don't think I've seen before. Quite remarkable.
It may not have been in a report in the past, Dave. You're right. The recommendation was 3 to 6, and I think Councillor Kepke moved 3 to 5 as the goal. In the past, there's been little surveys that have been sent out to council just for Kate Allen to do her planning of what we were aiming for, what we were thinking. And so, I think we've voiced individually sort of feedback, and it was probably all over the place. You're right, I don't recall it coming to us like this with a recommendation.
And I guess that's a good thing, because people now know, okay, here's the goal. Let's see how you do. And I think that's a reasonable way to it. It's a reasonable approach to it. Almost like saying the best surprises are no surprises.
Yeah, well, and as we've been doing our long-term planning on budgeting, capital, all those things, I think clearly we're getting a little more precise. There are variables. It might be a provincial grant. It might be new assessment that we're always been aiming to keep adding to that assessment base. The other thing that we often overlook when we talk about new assessment is we can go out and have umpteen new buildings that bring in new assessment, but then a commercial, like a mall or something, will be assessed high based on market value. The value comes down, they get reassessed, we've got to pay it back. So I know over the last number of years, we've had some growth that actually just went, back to a reassessment on commercial property. So it's trying to balance it, of course, trying to make sure that we've got our eggs in several baskets, so to speak, when it comes to tax from industrial to commercial to residential. Multi-residential, of course, is its own category. So, in each of those, we've been doing very well. And I think when Kate's report comes in a couple of weeks, it's going to be very good news.
Good. Well, if we can take a little diversion off of the budget itself, although it's related. One of the common themes I've seen across Grey Bruce in the other municipalities is the cost of OPP policing, and I know Mayor Kentner of Meaford just shook his head and said, people are going to be really shocked. And I noticed that South Bruce Peninsula said we can't afford a 17 or 18% increase in OPP policing because it will send our taxes through the roof. And they are joining with other municipalities to call on the province to take up a bigger chunk of policing. What's the state of policing here in Owen Sound? We have a municipal force. We don't have OPP. Costs are going up. Policing costs are going up. Where are we sitting at with that?
I think we'll see a lot more reasonable increase than what the OPP. We've heard 28%, I think over 30% for a couple of municipalities. To play the devil's advocate, be a little blunt, some of those mayors maybe should be saying thank you to the provincial government for having their police subsidized for the last number of years, when Owen Sound and West Grey and Saugeen Shores and Hanover in this area with municipal services haven't been getting that kind of subsidization like the others have. So even with that increase that the OPP municipalities policed by OPP are seeing, I think it's still a little subsidized, and I think they should say thank you again compared to what we're paying. But we know we're paying real costs.
Just to be clear,
I think there's going to be some leveling out.
Well, and just to be clear, in Owen Sound and in West Grey and in Hanover, the municipality pays the full freight. It's the ratepayers who pay the full freight. There's no provincial subsidies other than grants or special programs. Is that true?
Well, yeah, we will get the odd grant for the odd program, certainly, but from the province. But we are running a police force that is community-based, that has police officers attending things. OPP will have less officers in the ground, and that's what we looked at a few years ago. And we looked at OPP costing. We're going to be sharing the OPP officers throughout the territory, not just within Owen Sound, and we weren't going to have the same coverage. So those municipalities that are using OPP are really contracting with the provincial government to provide them with policing. Their police boards are different. They don't really have the same input into their police boards, and they've been paying a contract with the government of Ontario has been carrying a portion of that cost, and they've contracted for something less than 100% of the cost. I think it's the best way to describe it.
Sure. I mean, it's a complicated thing, but and I know I remember the conversation we had about OPP versus locally funded policing and the tension, intensity of the discussion. But
well, you've got two different police style of associations, and they protect their turf. And
They
that's,
do.
I shouldn't assume yet, but we've our police chiefs and city managers have started the process with West Gray to start to look at how we can do things better together. I still think there's going to be other municipalities coming in, especially with these OPP increases that they're seeing. They're going to start looking for alternatives, I think. So that process has already started, and we think that will go pretty smoothly.
Good. And let's not forget that our dispatch services are a revenue center as well.
Yes. Yep.
So
that NG, so new generation 911 that will have more video, etc. We're prepared to do more of that. Our IT department at the police station, which is a pretty specific IT, is providing service for other police forces in the area and helping out. So yeah, there's a few income sources there that help us maintain the cost of police.
absolutely. Well, let's move on to some other good news. And the one I wanted to talk about first was Alpha Street. If I read the press release correct, it's almost ready to open. Today is Wednesday. It'll be opening next week.
I believe Monday. I think they're hoping to get the top surface down this week. It's been good weather, so they've been able to. Otherwise, it was planned that they wouldn't put the final surface on till next year. So that means that we're back up and running in fully early. So within the time budget, finished early, within budget financially, and the quality of work is there. So we've hit those three corners of the triangle that you always try and hit in development.
Yes, and kudos to city staff and the contractor for doing it. I know it's been a bit of an inconvenience, a lot of dust, a lot of dirt, but I think it will, in the end, it'll pay off.
Yeah, it needed to be done. There's a lot of trucks that go up and down there to get to the grain elevator, so it's a more of a well-used road than people realize.
Yes. Well, I noticed that there are a lot more trucks on 10th Street West because they've been having to detour down 10th Street and making a right up and going up 2nd Ave. So it's, it'll be good to see that traffic shift as well.
Yep, yeah.
And then transit will return to its usual rerouting or its usual routing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see, when you undertake projects of that scope, there's always a big gulp, especially on the part of the city. But, I think that because it's a big ticket item.
It's a very big ticket item, and where you're dealing with hills, you'll recall for some of us that have kicked around council for a few years, when we did 8th Street, we ended up having a little bit of swampy land that collapsed that we the engineers didn't anticipate. So there's always a little gulp there as well that nothing comes out that you didn't anticipate, and we've had good luck with Alpha.
I also noticed that there are rest stops on the way up. That there's planned, and I think that's very useful. It's a good walk-friendly initiative, and people can sit down and just stop or walk their bike up.
Walk their bike up, ride their bike up. If you had to use any kind of mobilized wheelchair or something like that, there's room there. And that's the whole idea. As we redo hills, we did the same thing with 8th Street, sidewalks on both sides a little bit wider, and bicycle lanes. And this active transportation, it gives a little more width there for bicycles if trucks are on the hill. And that's what we'll try and do in everything as we go forward.
Terrific. Well, everybody make their inaugural run and maybe honk your horn. as you hit the top or the bottom. So good
Yep.
stuff. Good stuff. Excellent. Excellent. But there's other construction that's going on, and you have to look at, always in the fall here in the city, there's stuff going on in terms of construction. And I was thinking of River District Phase 2, which is not quite as far advanced as Alpha Street, but it's certainly coming along.
It's coming along. There has been some delays there. We're a little bit behind schedule there. I was just past there, and the inlaid bricks going into the sidewalk. Fancy light post, I guess you'd call it, has gone up. The wooden runners are going on top of the boardwalk. The metal supports, beams are already in place. So it's getting really close to being completed too, so it won't be long.
Good, good. So what's the deadline? December 1st, and then it'll be put over to spring?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Well, I know that there's always that sort of depending on the weather. At the end,
as long as we've got good weather like we've had, we'll keep moving.
Good.
For sure.
Good. Yeah. Is there any plan for any opening ceremonies for the River District that you're aware of, or are we not quite there yet?
We did have a plan set for November. I don't think we're going to hit it. And again, at that point, they're waiting for beams or something got held up to come in, so that put everything behind. But we want to have some fun with it for sure.
So maybe this spring.
Maybe this winter, I don't
know. Well, if we have a cold winter, you can go skating on the Sydenham River. No.
I wouldn't recommend that. But...
Call out the fire department. Call out the fire department. Yeah. Well, what will be next after River District Phase 2? Will there be a Phase 3 eventually, or are we going to take a pause?
Well, there's a River District master plan that would include 8th to 9th and 9th to 10th on First Avenue West. We've put that on pause, knowing that we had Alpha Street. I think 9th Avenue up at about 20th Street needs some work. We're going to be putting in water and some wastewater and other things on 9th Avenue East. So, there's a number of projects. So we bumped a couple of others up in priority and bumped that one down a little bit.
Sure. Well, who knows? There is still work to be done. It was, I would say that my impression is that particularly 8th to 9th on First Avenue West is very, very heavily used as a community gathering point in front of the Tom, in front of the library, the cenotaph, the band shell. There's a lot of activity that goes on there.
Yes. I can perceive where we could be making better use between 9th and 10th as well. Mm-hmm. There is back in the 70s or 80s, there was a garden that was put in there, patio sort of area. Wait till you get to the river precinct that we're working on right now on the boardwalk on the east side with some of the trees removed. It really opened up the view across the river to the west side, and it's a neat view. And I'd never really had, my dad had a clothing store in Main Street. I was in that block in the back alley just about all my life. But this is just looking at this construction. It really changed the visual to the west side of the river. I think there's opportunities there.
I would also think that it'll change the store backs. Opening up those, I know there are sometimes balconies up on those on the back of those stores or the top floors, and maybe there's access to the front of the store from the back.
I remember there was a master plan put together, and I'm going to say it was 86 or 87 that they put in some inlaid brick. They actually put parking meters back in there that nobody used. But at that time, a lot of the building owners, store operators looked at putting either a back door into their store, or else some of them were running a small enough store out onto Main Street, 2nd Avenue, that they could put a different business facing backwards. So I think we'll see that coming now.
And don't forget, in the 80s, there was still a railroad siding that went down that section of road.
Around that time, they're discussing taking it out. Maybe they had taken it out. Like, I remember the bridge being there, and I don't remember what year it came out.
Well, I think it was the early 90s when they did the harbor redevelopment. That's when the whole thing got redone and the Y disappeared. But yeah, that you got to remember that was a railroad switchyard.
Yes. Yeah, we used to have to run out from the store to move the car from time to time, because the train had to get up the street to get cars from one side of the river to the other.
Yeah, it's funny. You see those videos on YouTube of, but I think it's in Vietnam or Thailand, where there are railroad tracks that run right down the center of a street, and it's very, very narrow on the and the shops just sort of fold themselves back and pull all their goods back, and you see that, and the train runs through. Well, we had that, but it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure there are stories. There are lots of stories about those railroad days. That's for sure.
Yes, I'm sure there are. There's lots of books.
Absolutely. I guess the other thing I was going to ask you about is that the city sold a fire truck.
Yes, so we bought a used fire truck and got a good deal and got it refurbished, and it will extend the life cycle, extend the cycle. And so we've got a truck to be sold, put it on the auction. There wasn't anybody that put in any interest. And then after we took it off the auction, and the reason why we pulled it down was, our staff pulled it down, was that they weren't sure when we were going to get the new truck. We got the new truck. This one can now be replaced and let go. And we got an offer from a different municipality that was approximately as good or better than what we expected. So we've got a willing purchaser and a truck that we can sell to them.
Excellent. Hey, I didn't quite hear during that report that the new truck has arrived, has it? Or is it still yet to come?
I've forgotten whether it's here now or whether it's arrived, but the old truck will go after if it isn't here yet.
Okay. Because I know the fire chief was having a great time down in Ohio doing the equipping and doing the direction for the customizations for the city. So,
and that's been a couple of months. So I'm not sure if it's arrived or if it's still coming, but it'll be here soon if it isn't here.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. It's when a fire chief gets to design the equipment the way they want, that's like a kid in a candy store, I'm sure.
Well, there's probably lots of people that would like to help them. There's lots of people that fire trucks are like train engines can be a hobby for people, and it's fascinating. Or miniature railways. It's fascinating how people will get into a hobby of that. So there's few that in the area, I'm sure, that would love to be able to deck out a fire truck.
Oh, I'm sure, and I can name a couple of them. Anyway, Ian, we're going to take a break and come back because we're not finished yet. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking. We'll be right back. We're clear.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com. This is Rogers TV.
Sports is life. It's clear cut. Everything's out in the open. There's nowhere to hide. I had to prove myself. More than anyone else.
You must be so proud of your son. He's gonna go pro. The sky's the limit.
There's always a winner and a loser.
You cannot reach the sky in broken cleats.
Of course, I always want to be the winner. And I did reach the sky.
Norman Kwok, the first Chinese-Canadian professional football player, still holds records to this day. He retired from the sport in 1960 and later became Lieutenant Governor of Alberta.
Hi, I'm David Shearman, host of Politically Speaking on Rogers TV. Join me this fall for more interviews with our local, provincial, and federal politicians. Politically Speaking on Rogers TV.
It's nice to get people to realize.
Hi, I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking. Welcome back. My guest is Mayor Ian Boddy of the City of Owen Sound. And you know what? We're going to keep talking about fire. The fire services. We talked about the fire truck, but on the break, Ian mentioned to me that the city has hired its second firefighter who is female. Firefighters have been traditionally a male-dominated occupation. There are women in many departments. Is this the beginning of change?
It is change. I'm not sure if it's beginning. It is change. So yes, we have two women that now have been hired as firefighters at the police or at the fire hall. And we really have an antiquated fire hall that is now, 50 years old with original windows. And same thing we went through at City Hall a few years ago, but we've also got, we need to have separated bathrooms and change rooms and those types of things. So there's some renovations that are needed. I know the officers themselves, the firemen down there, have been doing some good work and making some changes to try and help out. It's great that they've been doing it, but at some point we're going to have a hard look at the fire hall and refurbishment.
Well, I know if anyone's interested and wants to see the scope of the project around the fire hall, corporate services in November is probably the best place to look because, or community services is probably the best place to look because there was a comprehensive report on the situation, the state of the fire hall, I'll call it that. And it was, for example, the city's having trouble getting repairs done to the heating system because the parts aren't available. And certainly there are certain standards for safety and occupational health that are essential that aren't being met. And I think it was the chief who said, Chief Eagleson said, if we don't make changes, the Ministry of Labor will have the last word. So,
yeah, I think that would have been corporate services.
Corporate services, okay.
That would have been looking at that. And of course, you can go into onsound.ca and hit government in the top corner, find the calendar, click on the calendar for the right day, go to the HTML, and you can watch the video specifically on that presentation. So
yes,
it's there for the background information if anyone wants to go and look.
And I would say, don't rush to judgment on the dollars and cents because that's a moving target. There's a lot, as you said, there's a lot more work to be done, but the point is it outlines the scope of the problem. So.
Yep, lots to be done there. I think we're meeting with somebody. I think we've got 67 buildings or structures that the city manages and maintains. It's pretty wild.
Well, I think you're onto something there because I don't think we realize the state of the infrastructure. In that same meeting, there was a comment about the Julie MacArthur, and there are certain parts of the Julie MacArthur, and I'm thinking, hey, that's a new building. No, it's 10 years old. And there are things in that building that are used regularly, which are now at end of life. You know, we can't use them anymore because they're either unsafe or if they reach end of life. So you got the decisions to make.
And that's part of the what's the scarcity in economics is unlimited demands or unlimited wants and limited resources, and that's being in council. You're trying to balance all of those.
Well, that is why we elect you and to do that balancing act.
Yep. Yeah, that's the biggest part of the job, I think, that not everyone realizes.
Yeah. And it's the other piece of that is that often there is information, and this is why I find it really helps to pay attention to the agendas and the presentations in city council meetings and the committees, because you get a really good idea of, oh, that's why it costs X or Y, or you can celebrate when, well, let's use Alpha Street as an example. When Alpha Street comes in on time, ahead of time, on budget and on quality, hey, that's great, that's wonderful, because there are projects that don't have that result sometimes.
Yeah, and we tend to that we have people in the community that will always focus on the thing that didn't quite match.
Yeah.
You know, we just talking about budget. You know, if you're a little bit over budget, people think, oh, that's awful. But in a sense, being the same amount under budget is also just as bad because you've overtaxed in a sense. And trying to forecast at the start of the year what's going to be spent in the next year can be very difficult. So even coming close, I like to use the bullseye theory, that if you're within a certain percentage of the budget, then you've hit the red dot in the bullseye, and usually we're pretty darn close to that. So it may be a little bit over, it may be a little bit under. When we're a little bit over, we'll hear from people, but it's the goal is to be as close to that budget as you can.
Right. Well, you know, speaking of budgets, one of the things that has come up on the radar are shared services. And there's been a number of shared services. Some of these are still in process, but police services is probably the best example. But we just finished the first year, I believe, of shared services for buildings and building inspection with Georgian Bluffs. And it appears that it's been a good success from the first report.
Yes, it has. And I think back to my university days, and the Mulroney government was looking at free trade with the states. And the economists were pointing out that a factory could have a factory in the states that's booming along at 80%, that's really big, and they could have a factory in Canada that's booming along at 100%. But if they can take that 100%, fit it into the 20% of unused capacity in one location, then it works out better. And that's basically the same strategy, the same economics working with Georgian Bluffs. So we've got building inspectors, we've got a building inspector department. We all have to have a building inspecting department. If we've got capacity in our department that can cover off Georgian Bluffs and help them, then it works out well. And so we did a test, and it has worked out well, and we'll continue for the next number of years with Owen Sound providing building supervision, building inspection services for Georgian Bluffs. And it just makes sense that we work together on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it uses excess capacity that's in the Owen Sound system for Georgian Bluffs, and it's a good example of a win-win.
Well, it's a savings for us because they're going to pay us some money, and it's a savings for them because they don't have to hire a full-time department that might not be 100% busy as well. So, you know, it's a way of filling that. It's a way of getting to 100% instead of having to 60, 70, or 80%.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I've also noticed around town is construction is starting. I remember I've asked you on several occasions, when are we going to see dirt moving up there by the hospital? And I went by there yesterday and dirt's moving.
There's, I think that the construction has started at Heritage Grove with buildings. They want to get going as soon as possible. There is construction on 16th Avenue across from Seasons or across from the Canadian Tire that will be office buildings similar to what is just south of there, right next door. Flatto up on 8th Street has brought in some equipment. They'll start to move the soil around to be prepared to be able to put in infrastructure in April. There's construction going on 9th Avenue with townhomes further going in north of 20th Street. So there's been lots of construction. Those are the obvious ones. Of course, we want the ones on 8th Street to go because we front-ended the infrastructure a number of years ago, I think about 2014, 2015, to start to get that opened up and developed. So we're happy to see some work there. Across the street, the Telford Creek, they started to prepare the land too for infrastructure to go in the spring.
And I also noticed that in the last city council meeting, there was a planning report that came forward about 1555 18th Ave East, which, let's call it in behind Walmart. Easiest way to describe it. And that's kind of the pre-construction road work that needs to happen before they can start actually moving dirt. But it's essential. So things are beginning to move.
And that's residential as well. That's Callaway. The 10th Street extension, I think, would go up behind Walmart, behind all the way to behind Winners, maybe come out at that corner. Yes, they're keen to get going.
Good. What's the state of the Skydev development on the East Shore, on the East Shore Road there? Have they started to move dirt yet? I know that there were some some servicing things that went through council a month or so ago.
Tim Simmons was talking to them recently, and they're working on their end of what they need to work on, and they'd like to get going in the spring. There's a number of others that they've got paperwork in at City Hall. It needs to go through the building department or the planning department, and then they need to go back out to their financial departments and put it together, and it takes a little while. But we seem to have a number that are really close. We could see some work happening in the spring.
So 2025, friends, you're on notice. There may be construction. There may be a lot of construction. But the point is, it's change.
Yes. Well, this is what we've been hoping for. Interest rates went up, and that put things on hold for a little while. Interest rates are back down, and certainly around my law office here, we're seeing more real estate happening, moving this fall than what we've seen for 6 or 8 months. I'm hearing that from real estate agents. I'm hearing that from builders that they're getting phone calls from people inquiring about building new homes, and it had been quiet for a few months. So we seem to be into that next phase, and I know a number of the developers that are keen to go. Boy, we're looking forward to it. We've been waiting.
Haven't we, though?
I guess I say that sort of in frustration because the planning department will be saying, Ian, what are you talking about? Like, we've been running ragged for the last couple of years, putting together plans and rezoning and those types of things. It always feels better when you can see the backhoe on the soil.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work yet to be done, but it's nice to see that, as I've said in our previous conversations, dirt's starting to move. And let's hope it continues. Let's hope it continues. So, and there's there's little things like that building across from Seasons. Is that BDO going in there?
I'm not sure who's going in there, but it'll be an office building similar to the one next to it that's Sun Life and
Sun Life
Connect Rehab. So yes, I can't remember who's going into it.
No, but and there's space in there in behind for a hotel, but that's been on hold, I believe, at this point.
We'll see in the spring.
That's we'll just wait and see. We're short on hotel rooms.
I know they've been active. Again, they went cold with interest rates like everyone else, but I know we've been hearing from them. So
good. Well, the big event in the last since we talked last has been the community engagement sessions for Vision 2050. And I know you attended some. What was your take on the sessions that you attended?
I attended all of them. If I could take just one step back, though,
absolutely.
Just before we started our Vision 2050, on the Thursday night we did the city open house. So did that at the Bay Shore. You've heard me harp that question period at a council meeting doesn't really work because we can't have a back and forth. We can't give a good long explanation that, I can come on here and babble for an hour, quite obviously, I don't have that ability at a council meeting. So doing an open house where people can come and talk to the people in the department, it's not just looking at City Hall as a building, but looking at the human beings that are working on it. Each department was there. We had partners in the city, others that are providing services that were there. People could come, go and talk to everyone, ask questions. We had over 50. I remember doing this a few years ago that I think we had 5 or 6. Did it in such a way that each individual doesn't have to go to a microphone and stand up in front of 20 people and be nervous. They can go and have a one-on-one in a department or every department that they want to have a discussion with, ask their questions, get their information, and make their suggestions. And suggestions got written down they had construction paper out, across the desks, and ideas were written down and rolled up and recorded. After that, we started Friday night with a session, and then I think 4 or 5 more on Saturday, and then 2 on Sunday with regard to Vision 2050 with the different, at the moment, the different heads of our strategic plan as topics, and had 20 to 30 people in discussing ideas and little roundtables, and it was really good. It was good to hear from people. It's good to get the feedback. It was good for people to realize that City Hall isn't closed to their ideas. That's hard to tell people, but we had that opportunity and were able to pull it together. So Jay Pitter of Jay Pitter Placemaking and her staff will take these suggestions, go out and start to build up the strategic plan, which is like a 25-year strategic plan, long-term thinking. How do we want our city to look? What do we want our it physically to look like? What services do we want to offer? What's the community going to look like? How do we want it to look? How do we want to be prepared as the changes come? And each council coming in the future will be able to make adjustments to that, pick off bits and pieces that they want to cover off in the term, different projects, and keep moving the city forward. So this is why I'm on council. This is why I'm mayor, is to be able to do things like this, plan ahead, set the table for future councils to be able to succeed.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the report of the first consultation that the survey that was done, because it was a very, very broad survey that hit groups that we really hadn't heard from before. And I would commend anyone to go to the city council website and take a look. I'm sure it's under Vision 2050. But that first report from Jay Pitter is worth your time to read, because it does lay out some really interesting thoughts about what really matters to the people and what people really are concerned about. That's great.
Yeah, it was good. We're so lucky to have Jay involved and Michelle at City Hall involved, and forward thinking and experience doing these types of things and listening to people and making sure that everyone that wants to get their idea gets it in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what will come next? What's the next step on the timeline with Vision 2050?
Well, after having these meetings over the weekend, she'll come back with recommendations under the headings of things that we want to chase after going forward, that the community wants to chase after going forward.
So will there be another cycle of meetings, or will there just be, will we get something we will chew on, or will there be more process, I guess is my question.
There'll be more process, yes. We'll be meeting, we've got a committee, we'll be meeting with Jay in the coming weeks just to plan out what the next steps are, but it's very much a consultative type of process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people will have, it's kind of a back and forth.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Well, that is actually quite exciting, because one of the things that you keep hearing is, well, how can we be engaged with the city? Well, this is the way. This is the process. And I anecdotally, I heard a lot of good things about the sessions as well. So, as well as that open house.
Well, and a little bit of this, of course, is back to John F. Kennedy's inauguration speech. That's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Mm-hmm. So as these groups come forward, Jay is very big on don't criticize unless you've got not necessarily the answer, but unless you want to work on the answer. So don't throw darts from afar unless you want to participate, is kind of her perspective. So these groups that have come forward with their suggestions, part of it is going to be good. What portion of this are you willing to take on and work on as we go forward? So it'll be, the idea is that this is a community Vision 2050, not just a City Hall corporate 2050 where you say to council, okay, do it for us. It's going to be, no. How are you going to help? Everyone's got to be involved in this. And that's the way she thinks. That's her history. And I think it's badly what we need here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because often the voices that get heard are the loudest.
That's why Jay won't do a town hall, because it's often the loudest person that, the most vain, I shouldn't use vain, the most confident that goes to the microphone, where there might be somebody that's got a really good idea that's a little more shy, that would rather do those one-on-ones. And that's her idea of getting everybody involved, not necessarily the most vocal, loudest, opinionated person. It's a great process, and I think it's going to be a great plan to go forward with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we've got about 4 minutes left, so I did want to quickly segue over to county. Are there any issues at county we need to keep our eyes on? I know that we'll be getting a new warden, because the current warden has said he is not standing for re-election, and we have one candidate, the mayor of the town of Blue Mountains, who has said, I would like to offer myself. Are there any other candidates that you're aware of, or will it be an acclamation? Oh, it's an unfair question.
I haven't heard of anyone else going forward, but I'm pretty confident it's pretty well a unanimous yes for Andrea at the council table. Certainly we'll have the Grey County budget coming up. They did this, we've done the strategic plan there more recently. There's always lots of stuff going on. Certainly they're looking at the transportation master plan and uploading some roads to the county, downloading some roads to the county, to the municipalities, how that will work. We've been meeting with Grey County staff along the way, and I think that's been going for 10 or 12 years or more that they've been chipping away at that. So it's time to get it to move forward. So that's something that's ongoing, and I suppose it's not going to change the daily life of any of the citizens, but it's more in intergovernment relationships. Certainly at Grey County, we're always looking at ways of working together, whether it be policing, whether it be waste management. That's on the tables. We looked for a grant a couple years ago, didn't get it, so it's on hold. But we're a pretty collaborative county, I think, with everybody trying to figure out how we can help each other. It's a pretty nice feeling to go up there when you know that.
Yeah, it's not an adversarial setting. You are more collegial because you're thinking of the whole county when you're sitting in those chairs. Yeah,
I think it's collegial anyway. I think it's the personalities of the people there are polite and et cetera, and we get along as a group of 18 for sure. It's also having that foresight of thinking, how can we help each other more than just getting along and improving things. It's looking for ways to do it better, and that's staff, that's counselors, that's everybody.
Sure. We have to always remember that it's upper tier, lower tier with very specific responsibilities, and it's not just Owen Sound or Georgian Bluffs or Meaford or Chatsworth. It's county as well. So
yes,
it's in some ways you take your hat off when you go up the hill to the county building and put another hat on.
Well, exactly. They talk about double hatters, and that was really driven into me by Arlene Wright and Al Barfoot and Bob Pringle and some of the councillors that were around that. And I actually saw Arlene, that confused me at first, vote in one direction, the city of Owen Sound, because it was in the city of Owen Sound's best interest, and going to the county and voting the other way. And it confused me. Like, why would you, either you support it or you don't. And it was no, from the county's point of view, this makes sense. From the city's point of view, that makes sense. And when I'm at that table, I'm thinking with that hat on, and it was a very distinct difference. So it is something that you go up, and there's times that you think this might. Or
I hate to cut you off, Ian, but we gotta go. So we gotta go. So thank you. Always a pleasure to have you, Mayor Ian Boddy of Owen Sound, and friends. Join me again. I'm David Shearman. Oh yes, we'll talk.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
RTV Sports Wrap every Wednesday as myself, Spencer Byers, and our esteemed panel talk about everything you need to know going on in football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and soccer as we joust about what's going on in sports, keeping you up to date on Rogers TV.
All crew. That's my favorite part. You see that jagged rock? They say it's haunted by mermaids.
To be a yachty, you need to have thick skin. I thought I was doing the right thing.
It's a bit harsh.
You need to stop.
Does anyone know where Steph is? Get him back here.